Hi, I'm Ryan Ashley, and today we're going to talk about what to do with all that leftover wire. If you're like me, at the end of a project, you find yourself surrounded by little pieces of wire, but what do you do with it all? I don't like to waste it. So today I'm going to show you how to make chain links, ear wires, and clasps out of your extra wire. Here's what you're going to need. Have a bail shaping plier, round nose plier, flat nose plier, bent chain nose plier, flush cutter, a few bits of leftover 20 gauge wire, and then I also have a hammer and a bench block, just in case you want to do a little texturizing. Okay, so you have leftover wire and you want to make ear wires. I'm going to show you how to do that. So I have here, this is, I don't know, about 3 inches of leftover wire, and it's 20 gauges. And so I'm going to go ahead and grab my round nose plier and create a little loop at the bottom. This is where whatever little bobble you want to hang will hang from. So I come right close to the edge of the plier. You see I have a few, maybe 4 or 5 millimeters there to the edge. That way we get a nice size loop. And I'm just going to bend it over, just like this. See how I kind of hold this in place as I reposition my tool to get that nice circular shape. And then I grip it right where the 2 wires meet to do a quick bend back, because the goal here is I want to create sort of a 90-degree angle. I want that wire, that stem, to go straight up from the loop. Now that I have that, I take my bail shaping pliers and come up about, about 3/4 of an inch, just right there. Bend my wire backwards. And then that's where you're at now. Take my pliers, reposition them just to give a quick little bend right at the bottom. Use my flush cutters to snip the excess. And look, I have even more wire to play with later. And now I'm going to give it a slight just hammer to kind of make everything flat and even and hard. As you're hammering your wire, as those molecules spread out, you'll notice that things like loops might open up just a little bit. So we want to close this back up. Let's just use our bent chain nose plier to kind of zhuzh that back into place. Just barely squeezing it, just to give it that nice, flush close. And now, look, you have an ear wire. Next up is one of my favorites. I love creating my own chain links, because when you create your own chain links, you know that your chain necklaces are going to be different than anybody else's out there. So I'm going to show you a couple different little loops, and the main thing you'll need is this bail shaping plier. So let's go ahead and get into that. Have my bail shaping plier here, and I'm going to make 2 different sizes of links so you can see. I put the wire kind of right in between, and you'll see there's a little bit poking out on the edge. I like to have some overlap when I'm doing this to make sure that the end result is really clean and crisp. So I bend this around. And you see how I get that overlap there? That's perfect. Now I'm going to use my flush cutters to cut right in the middle to make sure I have a super clean, crisp kind of join. I put my finger here so this little piece doesn't fly up and hit me in the face. There we go. And then I'm going to set this aside because I'm going to hammer it in just a moment. Now, I still have some excess left. So I can go ahead and use the smaller side of my mandrel, my bail shaping plier, and go ahead and create a link over there as well. Same thing, you want to have a little bit of overlap. There we go. Use your flush cutter to snip right in the middle. Put your hands there, your fingers, so that no wire kind of flies all over the place. And then I'm going to hammer each of these links and then connect them. This definitely works with 18 or 16 gauge wire too, but right now we're using 20 gauge. Okay, so I got that one kind of hammered and texturized. And then this one, I'll do a little more on. I want to add a little bit more texture. So I'll use the ball peen side. And I'm actually going to use my bent chain nose plier to kind of hold this in place because I don't want to hit my finger. Okay, move it around to get it nice and even. Let's see here. Okay, so now you see that you have this really nice kind of textured piece here. And they're open. They're not meeting exactly in the middle because when you hammer, those molecules spread out a little bit and things open up. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of take my flush cutter and make sure that it is completely flat in the middle. I see a little bit of an edge there, which might prevent my link from meeting in the middle. So I'm just going to lightly just snip that. There we go. Let's look at this one. Yep, same thing here, just a little bit of a corner that got created from that hammering. So I'm just doing a quick little snip. And then I'll use my flat nose pliers on one side, my chain nose on the other to make them connect. Just gently kind of tweaking it into place here. Okay. And I see that this needs just a little bit of repositioning, so I'm just kind of bending it in a tiny bit. And then I'll use this one to connect. Loop it through. Same thing. Looks like I need to bend this side down a tiny bit. It takes just a tiny bit of patience. But when you do it like that, it almost looks like they're soldered together. So now I have the beginnings of a beautiful chain link necklace that's totally unique. And that was just with leftover wire. You could probably make a whole necklace out of your pile of leftover wire. So if you're like me, you're always looking for a clasp. It seems like every time I sit down to make jewelry, I'm wondering where my clasps are. This is another great way to use up that leftover wire, and it allows you to create kind of cool custom clasps for each of your pieces. So I'm going to quickly show you what almost looks like a figure eight kind of double loop clasp, and it's one of my favorites. So on one side I create a double loop piece, and the other side I create sort of a French ear wire looking piece. So let's go ahead and start with the double loop. I have my bail shaping plier here, and I'm first going to start with the small side, letting my wire hang off the edge a little bit. I'm doing that same kind of overlap that I did before, but we're actually not going to keep that overlap. We're going to now take our bent chain nose plier and hold it right in the middle, just like that, and then bend this backward. Now I'm going to go ahead and clip this first section of wire so that it's just out of the way. And I'm going to do this, making sure that I have my thumb kind of here so that wire doesn't fly. Okay, and now I'm going to use the larger side of my bail shaping plier, and I'm going to wrap this piece around it. And again, we want that overlap, so that way we have a little bit of extra wire to work with. Okay, I'm going to take my bent chain nose plier, because now you have this sort of fun squiggly looking piece, and I'm just going to kind of move that over, make sure everything meets up, kind of looks all symmetrical. And I'm going to then clip this final piece. And I'm going to give it a light hammer because I want it to be nice and solid and firm and also have some fun texture. So I'm going to put this in the middle here. Just kind of lightly tap on it on each side. And then using the ball peen side, I'm going to add a little extra texture. I'm getting kind of close to my finger, so if you want to, you can take another tool and hold it in place so that way you're not worried about getting in the way. Okay, so now this is kind of a little bit wonky from hammering. That happens. So I'm just gonna kind of just lightly shape it, kind of tweak it a little bit. And there you go. So this is the double loop side. Now, this is what I would attach to one side of my necklace. Like maybe I'd crimp some stringing wire to one side, then I'll use the other side to attach my kind of claspy part. So that's a technical term, by the way, claspy part. So remember that. This is basically gonna look like an ear wire, except much more kind of condensed. So I take the same first step. I put my wire kind of right near the edge of that round nose plier. Wrap it around. I adjust so that I can get that nice 90-degree stem, almost, not quite 90. There we go, kind of a 90-degree stem. And then I'm actually going to over-articulate this piece. So I'm gonna create kind of a dramatic angle. And now I'm going to take the larger part of my round nose pliers and move my wire all the way to the back. And I'm going to bend it around, create a bit of an overlap there, and then move this around and create a little bit of a swoop. So my goal here is to create, see, I'm going to just adjust this a little bit, is to create a clasp that is really beautiful and loops through that other side of my clasp, but it doesn't easily come apart. So I wanted to create where, you know, a spot where it's like almost touching, and I might even pull it over a little bit. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and snip this. You might also want to grab a file. If all you have is an emery board, that's okay. That'll help just make this edge kind of nice and smooth for when you're wearing a bracelet or a necklace. And I'm gonna go ahead and hammer this, and then I'll kind of adjust the shape a little bit so it's a little more finished looking. I want the texture to be nice and consistent with the rest of the clasp. Maybe a little bit of ball peen action. And then you see how I have some kind of strange angles there? I'm just going to use my tools to lightly squeeze and adjust these different places. Because what happens is, if you get a little bit of a corner or a strange angle, if you just grip that spot and lightly squeeze, you see how that rounded it out? It's a really nice trick. Same with this spot here. I feel like that's a little bit dramatic, so I'm just gonna lightly squeeze it to kind of bring it back into a nice curved shape. And then I feel like that's a little dramatic, so I'm gonna, there we go. Perfect. Now, I have a clasp. Okay, so now that you know how to make beautiful components with your leftover wire, let's walk through the tools one more time. We have a round nose plier, a flat nose plier, a bail shaping plier or a mandrel, a bent chain nose plier, a flush cutter, some pieces of 20 gauge wire over here, and then a bench block and a hammer. Now that you know what I do with my leftover wire, tell us in the comments below, what would you do with your leftover wire? Now, if you want to go ahead and pick up supplies and tools like the ones we used today, check out the links in the description below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you get notified every time we have a new video.